I can see me. Let me know if you all have anything out there yet. Looks like we're live. It looks like we're live. As soon as I get some confirmation, we will get started here. If you can see and hear me, if you would do me a favor and just say hello in the chat and let me know you can see or hear me. All right, we are ready to go. Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. It is so good to see you tonight. I assume you know my name is John Pavlovitz. I'd like to welcome you to this channel. This is actually, we've only been together a week here and we're only a week old. And so I'm just so excited at the conversations that have already started and just what's starting to build here. And that's going to be important tonight and going forward. Your perspective and your story is really integral to what we're going to do here. So please provide feedback tonight, comment on all the videos, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Just a little bit about me as we begin tonight. Some of you may not know, I have been a pastor in the local church for almost 27 years now, in a very different capacity now. Now, most of my time is spent traveling to cities all over the country normally. And when we don't have life-altering natural disasters, I'm usually traveling the country. Maybe I've visited you before. And so maybe you've read the blog or the books, or maybe I've come to your town. But my whole mission is to try to make this world more compassionate, more equitable, and genuinely kinder. So that's a little bit of why I do what I do. I consider myself sort of a war correspondent lately. So I travel the country, or I'm online, and people are telling me their stories. I get into a new town and I say, I get into the trenches with people. I say, tell me what's happening there on the ground so I can tell the folks back home. And that's what I write. The blog is an extension of that. I really try to tell the stories of people I meet, people like you, and so that conversations can happen that maybe aren't happening everywhere. So again, thanks for being here. Just so glad. The way tonight I think is going to work for this first live stream, I'm going to share some thoughts about sort of our topic tonight, and then I'll open it up for questions a little bit later. So I would ask you just to hold some of those questions so that they don't get lost in the feed. But the way we'll do it is, I'll share some things. We'll have some time to have a Q&A and have a discussion. And then we're going to repost all this later. So you'll be able to enjoy it. You'll be able to kind of stop and absorb some things. And yeah, so let's get started. Travel in the country, I hear a lot of stories, and sometimes the stories stand out. And recently I heard a story. We were traveling, and I think we were in Texas, and a woman came up to us, and she was really, really moved and really visibly shaken. And she said, "I'm a Fox News orphan." She said, "My family, they used to welcome me. We used to be really close, but then they started watching this network a decade ago, and gradually they've changed. And the values that I have now are liabilities for me. The things that I believe in, my convictions, are actually separating me from them." And if you're here tonight, you're probably here because you feel a sense of that sort of loss, that division, right? That isolation that so many of us are feeling right now. And the division that you're feeling is real. And the division in our country is it's a trickle-down cruelty that's kind of coming from the top. And what it's doing, it's causing these relational fractures. And I imagine you probably understand some of that. There's probably a relationship in your life that is strained or different or more difficult to navigate than it's ever been. And so we're going to talk about that. You may be involved in ghostings or unfriendings or coldness or just general, fighting. And so I want to address some of that tonight, because the question that I get asked more than any as I travel or online, people say, how do I deal with this person who I used to know or used to feel affinity with, used to have intimacy with, and now I don't recognize them, right? Now I don't understand them. There are fundamental differences that have sort of been revealed. And how do I deal with that? So I want to give you some things to think about tonight, because the truth is, everything that we're going to talk about is relationally unique, right? It's unique to you and the relationship that you have with this person and with this other person and with this other person. So there's nothing I can say that's going to be the catch-all, right? But I want to give you some things to think about that might help you process and remain sane while you do this. So what we're talking about right now is a fundamental tension. It's a tension between your relationships and your convictions, between the things you believe and the people you love. And right now, those things often are at odds. We like to think this is a political battle, but the truth is, and you probably know this is bigger than a political battle. It's a difference, it's a vision divide. It's a difference in how we see the world, how we view ourselves and other people, how we view community and nation. As I travel, I realize that the divide, there's really these sort of two communities. There's a group of people who are motivated by compassion, and then people who seem to be motivated by contempt for other people. There are people who sort of live open-handed, and then there are people who seem to want to live with a closed fist. People who believe that the world, they have an abundance mindset, that there's enough for everyone. And then some people live with a scarcity mindset, a mindset of lack. There are some people who are religious and they're driven by a faith that's based in love. And there are some people who are moved by a faith that is based in fear. And so I want to talk about that. The first thing I want you to do is put in the comments, what is the greatest relational challenge that you face right now? Maybe who is that with, or what is the setting, or what is just the greatest obstacle that you have in this political climate with everything that we have going on? What are some of the things that are most challenging for you? And then I want to give you some things just to think about. The first kind of truth I want you to remember is every person is a story. Every person that you're thinking about tonight, every person that you meet on social media, the people you live with, the people you go to work with, they're complex, right? They have stories. We are all a product of our stories, of the places we grew up in and the churches that we were part of or not part of, and the families in which we were raised, and our life experiences and our personalities and our very physicality. They all make up the very unique story that we sort of live inside. It's important to remember this, because when you see someone who disagrees with you, it's good for us to remember that there's a human being there. I tell the story in my book, A Bigger Table, about being at a conference with a lesbian teenager, and we're talking about issues of diversity and equality. And we're looking outside this coffee shop window, and she says, "John, I believe in all these things, but how do I love that guy?" And right outside the window of the coffee shop was Southern Baptist sign guy, right? Bullhorn sign. The sign says she was going to hell for who she is and how she loves. And I said to her, we have to try and remember that sign guy was not born sign guy. He has a story. He has a story about who he is, and he has a story about who God is, and he has a life experience that has led him to that spot. And so to try to understand that he's more than a stereotype and more than a caricature. So it's important for us to remember that we're dealing with stories here, not just this sort of simple two-dimensional person. So I want you to remember that, but it's important as you do that to realize all opinions are not equally valid, right? All people are equally valid, but not all opinions are, not all perspectives are. It's important because homophobia is not an acceptable perspective. To see someone as less moral value to me, or abject racism is not acceptable, and open bigotry is not acceptable. And we want to make sure that as we're thinking about these stories, that we don't just allow everything, right? You are not obligated to accept everything that someone believes. And you can do that because, see, as a pastor, as someone who's built sort of communities of diversity, I never want to, there's an excuse that I get. "Oh, John, you're not diverse because you're not allowing my perspective." my political affiliation. And I tell people I'm never going to use diversity as an excuse to bring people into closer proximity to harm, right? I'm never going to sacrifice vulnerable communities on the altar of ceremonial diversity. So yes, you want to love people and see them as fully formed human beings with stories, but you don't have to accept everything that they believe. Which brings us to sort of the second truth, right? Every person is a story. The second truth is not every issue is a deal breaker, but it's okay to have some deal breakers. It is really fine, and it's actually really good to have those values that you will not put aside, right? That you will not compromise. For me, there has to be things that I say, I will not abide this. I can love people and see them and accept them, but there are going to be things that are going to be hills worth dying on. And worth that relationship dying on. So I want you to try to, as you see people, as you love them, realize that not every issue, we're hypersensitive right now. We really have a quick trigger finger on that block button, right? We've just about had it. We're all frustrated. But I want you to realize not everything needs to be a deal breaker, but it's totally fine to have them. To have those lines that you will not cross, those things that you will not accept in close proximity of relationship with. That's a great question, even at this point, to put in the comment section. What are your non-negotiables? What are your deal breakers? And to be okay with that, to say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to know as I walk through the world and engage people, even people that I love, here are the things that I'm not going to stand for. And I'm going to do it lovingly and with great gentleness as much as I can. I had a conversation with a woman a couple of months ago. She said, my 27-year marriage just ended because of what I found out about my husband over the past 3 years. She said, I learned that I thought I knew this person, but I realized I didn't. And not only that, but I realized that there were some things that we couldn't overcome. And she grieved that, but the truth was that was the cost of her authenticity. It's important to know that you owe people who you have relationships with, you owe them dignity, you owe them honesty, but you don't owe them permanence. Because that's the sort of third truth, is that, the second truth is not all relationships are meant to last forever. That's the third truth. Not every relationship is going to last forever. You may already have faced those moments lately where you had that separation come, and that's okay. That's necessary. I wrote a blog post when I was maybe 6 years ago called If I Have Gay Children, If I Have LGBTQ Children. And the blog went viral and I received a lot of attention. And I got fired from my church just before that for speaking out on issues of race and sexuality and gender. And what I realized was that moved me, it allowed me a freedom to speak authentically. And then I was able to reach millions of people. And the relationships that I lost before then, the relationships I lost because of my honesty, that was the collateral damage. That was the cost of reaching a whole new group of people. So your relationships are not necessarily permanent. And some of your relationships may have to fall away so that you can be a more open, authentic, bold version of yourself. Because the fourth truth that I want you to think about tonight is the end of one relationship often means the beginning of another. So the stuff we're going through, think about it as the manure out of which the fragrant flowers of our future relationships are going to grow. You may move into some more bold place and you may lose some people, but you may gain a whole new community. In fact, you will gain a whole new community. I think what we're doing right now, we're seeing sort of a retribing of our lives. We're saying, I thought I was going to live alongside these people, or I thought I was going to worship alongside these people. And now I'm realizing maybe I'm not. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with evolving to a place and just realizing that's the cost of this. That's what we're talking about right now. I was in Missouri, and we're doing a Q&A after an event, and this really sweet woman, she was probably close to 80. She said, I want to tell a great story. I said, sure, we could use a great story. And she said, I have a friend on Facebook who I've grown up with who was posting derogatory memes about people of color. And she said, I decided that I wanted to comment right on this woman's Facebook profile that I thought that was inappropriate. And she said, I did. And so she unfriended me. I said, lady, I don't know if you know how great stories work, but that was horrible, right? We're all depressed here. But she said, but right before my friend unfriended me, I got a friend request from another person. And she accepted the friend request. She got a message, and the woman said to her, I'm a person of faith, but I'm so disheartened by what I see happening in the world. And I think it doesn't seem like there's any Christians left with any compassion. And I was really struggling, but then I saw your post on our mutual friend's wall, and that encouraged me to reach out to you. And now those women are friends, and they do activism in their city, and they have developed a whole community of work that they're passionate about. And that didn't happen unless there's this engagement where there's conflict. So leverage social media and be bold and use all those tools that you have, and don't be afraid to sever some ties or to cause some turbulence, at least, right? So let's talk real quick about strategies. What are the strategies that you're using to help navigate these difficult relationships? Tactics, strategies, approaches. I'm going to give you, 5 or 6 of the common ones. Maybe you can drop in the comment section. Here's a strategy that I use with people who I disagree with. The first strategy we often use is silence and distance, right? We either ghost them or we cease contact with people. And the pro of that, the good thing about that is you have sort of a quieter existence. But the con to that is that time is passing. And what we're finding out, we're seeing, tens of thousands of people dying right now. And we're realizing that we're missing birthdays, and we're missing graduations, and we're missing holidays together. And that's really important that we think about that, because time is passing, and we want to remember, weigh that hill that you're dying on and decide, is the silence that I'm inflicting upon this other person, is that distance, is that going to be worth what I'm losing right now? So think about that. But one of the things we do is silence and distance. The second way we sort of approach it is the uneasy truce, right? Maybe you know this. You say, okay, we're going to have our relatives come and we're going to hang out with our friends, but we're not going to talk politics or religion. Now that works a little bit. There's the pro is that there's a sense of peace that you get, but the con is really a really bad one to have, is that your relationships with people you're closest with or should be closest with become superficial. They become surface relationships. And we don't want to have the people that supposedly love us or that we love the most. We don't want to have to be partially honest versions of ourselves. We don't want to have to be edited versions of who we are. So maybe that uneasy truce is someplace where you're living. It may work for you for a while, but it may end up causing you really a depth of relationship. Now, the third one, which I know really well, obviously, is the knockdown drag out. You might be one of those people who said, you know what, I'm to the point, John, where I've had it. I just say everything. I go in all guns blazing, and I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may. Now, the pro of that is you get to clear the air and you get to be really honest. But the con is that you can do irreparable damage to relationships. You may say things right now that you can never take back or never fix. So there's the silence and the distancing. There's the uneasy truce. There's the knockdown drag out. And one of the ones that I think is really effective is the pause. The pause just simply means I can't deal with this person right now, right? So I'm going to step away. I'm not going to do it with anger. I might even tell them I'm doing that, but I'm going to take a breath from them, and I'm just going to sit and make sure that I can approach them again later in a way that is healthier for me, right? And then the other option maybe is the selective engagement. So it's real seasonal. You say, okay, I'm going to save it all up. I know there's a birthday coming. I know there's a graduation or there's a wedding. I'm going to sort of ready myself, prepare myself, and find enough energy to be decent. And this is really important because I have people in my life. I have an aunt, let's say. And sometimes our relationship is at the place where I can engage her. right? I'm ready. I'm in a state of kind of patience or kindness or compassion toward her, and I can engage with her. But there are sometimes in the things she's saying or what she's posting is so toxic, or it's bringing up such an anger in me that I know it's not healthy to engage her. So I'm going to do that dance. I'm going to find that space to kind of engage and withdraw, right? So I'd love to hear sort of, as you're navigating this, what are the things that you do? What are your strategies that are working? Maybe it's just wine and chocolate. I mean, that can be a simple strategy right now. So a couple more things, and then I want to open it up to you when I take your questions. Some things I want you to think about as we move ahead. One of them is, I'm assuming if you're here, you're probably leaning progressive theologically, politically. I'm going to assume that you're probably to the left of many of the people that you're struggling with right now. And I want to let you know the truth that you may forget. Even if someone is far more conservative than you, or even if they are really happy with the political landscape, they are feeling the relational collateral damage too. They notice the empty chairs. They grieve the loss of communication. They may express it differently, but they're feeling it as much as you. So no one is happy right now, really. They may claim that they are, but the relationships are all struggling. So try to remember that. Try to understand that as you face people who disagree with you, that it's not a one-sided pain. It really is a mutual, reciprocal thing. So some things I want you to remember, and this is something that if you read the writing, you may not realize that I understand. It's that Trump didn't create this. All the things that we're dealing with, the loud things, racism and bigotry and xenophobia and anti-Semitism and homophobia and transphobia, disregard of immigrants, create it. This administration didn't create it. What they did was they revealed it. They exposed it. They nurtured it. They made it acceptable again. And now they're sort of encouraging it. But there was nothing here. There's nothing here that was not here in 2015. It's important to remember, because the other kind of big idea that I want you to take away from that is an election is not going to change this. You and I, we're hoping that things politically are very different in November, but regardless of what happens on the 3rd of November, on November 4th, all the same ills and wounds and divisions are going to be there. And we're still going to have to be attentive. We're still going to have to be prepared to deal with the relational damage. In fact, it's going to be far worse, regardless of what happens. So all those things that we're concerned about, there is no magic pill that's going to, make them go away. Third thing is I want you to think about is life comes down to relationships, right? I mean, we know this. There's a handful of people at the end of our lives, maybe a few more, who are going to really feel our loss greatly. They say when, something happens, your life flashes before your eyes, and it does. And it never flashes the stuff that you did, the work that you did, or the money that you made, or the stuff you've acquired. It's always people, right? So be thinking about treasuring people along with your principles. Fight to preserve your relationships with people, but then realize that maybe the people that you really need to be thinking about are the people you don't even know yet. Here's an example. I have people in my life now who I would never have had I not expressed the things I expressed and had the confrontations and had the fallout. I would have never gotten to the place where I had a whole new group of people who I weren't even thinking about. And so compassion either way, compassion for the people that you live with and love and disagree with, or compassion for the people who are being marginalized right now, that has to be the genesis of what you do. It has to be the genesis of your life. The fourth thing I want you to think about as you're engaging and doing all this work is that there's power in your story and there's resonance in your voice. You are positioned in a place where I'm not. I can write something from a distance and send it out into the world, but you're in the trenches. You're the person that the war correspondent visits. You're on the front lines of this, which means you're perfectly positioned to say things that only you can say, right? Only you can be present in the lives of people in an intimate way, and that's a real gift. So use that relational capital that you have and fight in those small places for those things that you value. Because the last kind of truth I want you to think about is that you likely have 75 years or less here. Maybe much less. I don't have 75 years left. So what do you want to do with that time? What is a worthy use of those days? Think about that as you fight with people, as you endure people, as you forgive people, but as you fight for causes too. You only have a short time here, so what are you going to do with it? So for many people, they're saying, I'm not going to waste any more time with this person or this group of people. I'm going to move on because life is short. But you might say, you know what, life is short. I'm going to invest in this group of people because it's really difficult, but I know it's worth it. Because here's the great thing. People can wake up. People can evolve. They can progress, because you know how I know you did. You don't believe everything that you believed 10 years ago, theologically, politically. I hope you don't. You know, I was with a group of Christian moms of LGBTQ children, and they're all in different stages of acceptance or unacceptance. And one of the moms said, you know, when my daughter, the moment she came out to me, it started my clock on the idea of her being gay. She said, my daughter's clock had started decades ago or 10 years ago, when she had already processed all the questions. She had, you know, done all the work. She had processed all the grief. She had asked all the theological, spiritual questions. But this mom said, I hadn't done any of that. Once she told me that she was gay, my clock started, and I had to now catch up to her a little bit. I say all that to make sure that we give people a chance to evolve and to learn and to change and to grow, because many of them actually will. Many of them won't before the election. You know, the truth is, if people are entrenched right now after all that we've seen, they're probably not going to be moved by November, because they're invested in that story being true, and they're invested in the vote that they want to cast. So I gave you a lot of stuff. I threw a lot of stuff at you. I apologize for speaking that long, but I want to just open up and take some questions. So put some stuff in the feed right now if you would, and I'd just love to hear you know, what you're thinking about right now. So someone is saying we haven't dealt with the isms as a nation. I mean, we haven't done effectively. No, we haven't done that. And I think we have, you know, when we talk about the isms, racism and anti-Semitism and, you know, homophobia, all those kind of big words, we're dealing with systems and we're dealing with stories, right? We know that the systems are out there and we have to change those systems, but we encounter the systems through stories, through individuals. So I think, to your point, Veronique, we do both of those things. We have that personal, in the trenches, living relationally, and then we work on those bigger kind of systemic ills. And we can't do one or the other. We got here because we haven't really done well with either of them. So another example, you know, you see Ahmaud Arbery's, you know, murder this past week. That's a story. But the system that created it, the sort of mindset, the dehumanizing of people of color, or the less than, greater than story that these men obviously grew up in, that's part of the system. So we have to do both of those. So Abby says, do you believe that as ministers of the gospel, we should always be measured when speaking with those who might not be as open-minded? So Abby, great question. No, I think, you know, I was meeting with a pastor in Philadelphia, and this was a pastor of a large church. He had been really conservative, Southern Baptist, and then he evolved and he changed denominations, and now he's in this, you know, progressive Methodist church. And we were talking about what I was going to share on that Sunday, because I like to warn pastors just in case they think I'm going to drop some bomb. And I was telling him here was what I was going to say, and he said, well, I said, is that going to bother you? And he said, no, please do, because I want to say that, but I can't say it. And I said, well, you could say it. You just might end up out here like me. But I think it's important, you know, we look at Jesus, and whether you're a Christian or not, Jesus was direct and he was bold. Yes, he was loving, but he was always motivated by compassion. If you read Matthew chapter 23, whether you're a Christian or not, it's basically a whole chapter of Jesus railing into the religious leaders. And the religious leaders could have felt like he was being, Jesus, that's being harsh. But the words of Jesus were redemptive, even though they were bold and hard-hitting, because I think Jesus was motivated by compassion for hurting people. He wasn't motivated to hurt another group of people. So it's important for us as Christians, as leaders, as people of morality and conscience, to always try to figure out, what is my motivation? Am I trying to hurt someone, or am I trying to protect someone? The former is really going to be destructive. The latter is going to be largely redemptive. All right, I'm going to scroll down here. Someone says, I feel very urgent about the environment and all the rollbacks Trump has done that create terrible results. And that's the thing right now. I think, I talked about it in the grief video that I did a couple days ago. The difficult part for all of us right now is most of us are compassionate people. We have empathy, and we're grieving, and there's so many things to grieve. And so we're trying to pick, what do I get? Where is my deal breaker? Is it the environment? Is it immigration? Is it the poor? Is it race? And the fact is that all of these things are coalescing around this person, this politician, this administration. So these are heavy days for us. It's no wonder we're exhausted, right? A couple more questions. Someone says, I cannot feel compassion as I should, as I see we're going down the path of Hitler. So Donna says, it's really hard for me to feel compassion when I know we're going down this road, and there are many people that I love and respect and know who are signing on to this. And that's true. I think, Donna, what we do is we try to retain our dignity, and we try to remember the humanity of the people across from us. Even though they're acting inhumanely, and even though they're violent and destructive, we can't become them. We can't become monstrous as we oppose monstrous things. So it doesn't mean we abide anything. It doesn't mean we allow anything. It doesn't mean we're not completely loud about what we believe. It just means we're not going to dehumanize people. Lois asked, how do you think the pandemic has impacted the entrenchment that existed? Yeah, amazing. Somehow, I thought when this began, there's no way that this group of people is going to make a pandemic partisan. Surprise. I thought we were going to actually pull together and it was going to bring out our better selves. And I wrote a piece about that really early on, maybe in March. America, this is our chance. We can get this right. And yet what we've seen is people digging in their heels. And that's part of the story. Remember that I went to earlier? We're all part of a story. So many people, because they grew up in a destructive religion or a really perverted sense of who God was, or a really unhealthy mindset about difference, their identity is tied up in this presidency. And no matter what happens, facts, details, information, data is not going to keep them from making that story be true, from voting the way that they're going to vote, or for justifying why their vote before. So yeah, it has put those. It's a deeper divide than ever, and that's the frightening thing. I grieve that people think I'm always pissed off. I'm really just sad because I grew up, in churches. I've served thousands of people, and I see many of those thousands of people claim that they love Jesus and claim they're pro-life, and yet roll their eyes at 80,000 dead people as if, well, that's fine. Let's just go open the country. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. A couple more are coming in. How can religious leaders stand up for Trump and back his ideals and policies? Well, here's the deal. Power is seductive. And when you are offered power, ultimately, it's really difficult to say no to that. And so what Donald Trump did was he presented evangelicals with an opportunity. They knew this person has no working morality. He's sort of a husk, right? He's just a container, and he'll take on the morality of anyone that will vote for him. So it was kind of this mutual partnership. Donald said, I'll court you. I'll let you get everything passed that you want passed. I'll get all the judges you want, all the laws changed that you want. and I'll be your mouthpiece. And the religious people said, perfect. Because if Trump hadn't won, this religious right thing would have been seen as the dying dinosaur that it really still is. It's just right now it has that last gasp of power. And so that's why religious people are doing it. They all want that story to be true, because to reckon with their vote would be to say, I'm culpable for all this stuff, and I can't let that happen. All right, a couple more. Lisa says, I'm struggling with my MAGA parents. They listen to Fox and Trump and are not staying home. I'm afraid they're going to die. They have health issues, but will not listen to me. Lisa, yeah, this is happening millions and millions of times. So the first thing I'll tell you is you are really in good company. I tell the story in one of the blogs that we went over to a relative's house for a gathering, and we got there early, and we walked in the house, and we walk in the kitchen, and Fox News is playing on the TV on the counter. A relative came down, and it was almost as if they were watching porno, because they just like ran over to it and turned it off. Oh, hi, and ran on with their conversation. But it was like, even they knew there was an alarm that went off that said, either I think this is wrong and I'm watching it, or I know this person's going to be really upset that I'm watching it. And I think that's the untold story of these days. This is what we're talking about tonight, the relational collateral damage of all this that we're going to be living with for decades, for the rest of our lives. Some people, because of the isolation right now, people are dying and they're never getting to resolve these things. So there's a huge toll. All I can tell you is make the best choice that you can in the middle of the day that you're dealing with, and then course correct if you feel like you get it wrong. Try to, some days you're going to feel like you were cruel and rude, and some days you're going to feel like you weren't bold enough. Just cut yourself some slack, because that's a really difficult relationship. I'm fortunate relationships of parents or children or spouses, and maybe you draw some strength from the people here in the comments and realize, how people are coping. All right, a couple more. Jody says, despair is the word I've felt more and said more in the last few months than in my whole life. It's a grieving. Yeah, Jody, it's loss. It's over and over. It's mourning things. And that's why I never want to be cavalier with what I write about, right? Sometimes I'm just throwing it out there, or I shared some things about balancing a relationship with a conviction. And I realize that's really easy to say, how to do that. It's really important that you realize that I would never want to be flippant about those things, because the truth is I'm grieving it like you are. I get up every day and I can't recognize the country. I can't recognize the church. I can't recognize people that I used to love. And so that's why I do this work. That's why we're together tonight. That's why this channel exists. That's why I do the work that I do, so that we can draw strength and encouragement from one another. Someone said, someone said, I cried my eyes out today. Everyone I know is supportive of MAGA with no understanding for the consequences. That's the other story here. There's the idea that the president will gaslight people, right? He'll just lie to you. And then we see that that's not reality. But what happens is we have enough people around us who are fine with it, and you start to really question your sanity or your convictions or your stubbornness or whatever it is, and you start to say, is it me? And I said that in a video last week, but I really want you to know it's not you. I mean, your faculties are intact. Your mind is fully right. Your heart is working properly, and your soul is functioning. There are just a lot of people who are putting all their former values on hold so that they can embrace this thing, because they feel if they lose this, they're going to lose everything. We know that this is about whiteness. It's about keeping a majority, feeling like we still have power and voice, and losing that. And that's the bedrock of all this that we'll talk about another week. Jeff says, how do you manage other religious leaders that challenge you on your message? Jeff, I handle it the way I handle all critics of everything that I do. I know why I do what I do, right? I know the story that I've walked through. I know the things that I've seen. I know the stories that I've compiled. So I get up every day saying, I'm going to just operate from a place of truth, a place of honesty, to try to do it gently as I can, but I'm going to be bold, because here's the thing for everyone here. Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the truth is, I don't care if I'm disrespected or hated or talked about, or if I lose friends, because at the end of the day, I want to be able to sleep at night. It's not always easy right now anyway. Bob asks, where will this conflict take place after Trump leaves the White House? Well, that's the thing, Bob. I mean, nothing is going to change. We're going to be in the same place. We may feel a little bit better. We're going to wake up and say, oh, we have some people that we respect in power. We feel a little bit less vulnerable. Maybe we can all, I think what we'll be able to do is take a breath. We won't have to be fighting from the moment we get up in the morning. We won't have to roll out of bed and say, I'm going to check Twitter, but I know it's going to be bad news, or I'm going to turn on the news. I know it's going to be terrible. We're going to be able to pause, but then we're going to have to deal with everything. In fact, the bigots and the fearful people, remember those people, the close-fisted people, they're going to be more entrenched than ever. They're going to feel more urgency. And so we're going to be dealing with all of this. A couple more. Sort of how, okay, have those people so lost touch with their souls that they cling so hard to someone who seems confident, like Trump tries to project? The thing about, here's the funny thing. Most of the people who embrace Donald Trump are also professed Christians. Christians who are more conservative like authoritarian leaders. They like to have someone in charge, to be told what to do. They like to be obedient because that's a value. All right, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to be a good Christian. I'm going to listen to this person in authority. That's why I listen to my pastor. That's why I trust the governors. And so what you have is a group of people who love the idea that there's this strong person who's going to take care of everything. And when someone like Trump says, I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to do it all, I got it, they'll even throw away all rational, critical thinking, right, just to embrace that person. That's why we see what we see. Julie says, I don't know what I will do if Trump wins in November. Okay, Julie, so someone asked me that. I wrote a blog post on it. What happens if he wins again? And there's two parts to this. If he wins again, it's going to be really bad, right? But if he wins again, people like you and me are going to be more necessary than ever. People of compassion and boldness and values are going to be more necessary than ever. We're going to have to be louder and more organized. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, right? So if he wins, we're going to have to be doing the same thing we're doing today, which is trying to figure out how to be people of faith and morality and conscience and fight for the things that matter to us. So here's the deal. I want to respect your time. So I don't want to take 2 hours out of your life, but I want to give you a couple closing thoughts, and then we'll do this again if it's something that you've enjoyed. And I'm really grateful for your time and for your engagement and for your comments. I'm going to go back tonight and read them all, because I'm going to answer a lot of those questions in the future videos that I'll be doing this week. So I want you not to apologize for how passionate you are and how vehemently you fight for what you believe in. Because all this stuff that we're talking about tonight, it's not stuff. It's human beings. And that's the point of all this. I'm not out there, I'm not fighting for a political position or a religious tradition. I'm not fighting against a party. I'm fighting for human beings who are more vulnerable than ever in this administration, in this season of America. So at the bedrock of all this, remember, I do this for people. I want to preserve people's lives. I want to help them. I want to make them feel seen and heard. So I just tell you that I appreciate who you are and what you do, and the fact that you read the blogs and the books means that you and I we're like-hearted people. And so keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting for the things you believe in. Balance your relationships with your convictions and realize that it's okay to have deal breakers. Not everything needs to be, but you can have some. And then do the best you can today. I mean, these are difficult days. You've never lived through a day like this. So do your best, and then tomorrow get up in the morning and then do it all over again. So, friends, I will say thank you for being here. I'll give you, as you know, like the channel if you've enjoyed tonight, subscribe and all, so we can keep in touch. Send me ideas for other videos that I can do, and then let me know how I can help. So these are difficult times, but I'm glad to be in these difficult times with you. So keep going and be very encouraged tonight. You are loved. Peace.